Dr. Elizabeth Carr is Professor and Chair of Dental Hygiene at the University of Mississippi Medical Center School of Dentistry, where she serves also as the Director of the UMMC School of Dentistry Population Oral Health Collaborative. Among her honors and awards, Elizabeth was selected UMCC School of Health-Related Professions Alumnus of the Year in 2016, a healthcare hero by the Mississippi Business Journal in 2018, and has 3 times received recognition for her teaching by the UMCC Student Selected Nelson Order for Teaching Excellence. Along with her teaching and administrative duties, she enjoys encouraging others, guiding through change, and inspiring others to make courageous choices. Dr. Carr is also being awarded honorary fellowship today in the ACD. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Carr.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Lamb, for that warm introduction. I'm so honored to be here with each of you today while you're enjoying your lunch. And I'm here today to talk about something that I believe the ACD has a really great role in providing, and that's the precursor to what the ACD does, is to have some courage. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. When you walked across the stage and got your dental diploma, you accepted a calling on your life because you provide a service that other people can't provide for themselves. And when that happened, you immediately became a trusted professional in your community. You're the person that your team looks up to, your family looks up to, your community respects and wants information from, and that comes with a lot of responsibility. And that's where the ACD comes into play, because with the ACD's mission to advance excellence and ethics and professionalism and leadership in dentistry, it truly is the conscience of our profession and what dentistry does. But what I want to do is to talk a little bit about the courage of dentistry. So if you're not courageous, and we've heard this throughout this whole event so far, of people talking about making the best decisions, but all of that starts with you deciding that you're going to be courageous and stand up for the right thing. So I'll start off with a little quote from Ecclesiastes with King Solomon, where he basically is saying there's nothing new under the sun. So all of these principles have been reiterated for millennia. So since the time that we were recording language, you've heard people talk about what is the right thing to do. So the 4 words that you see on the screen, prudence, justice, courage, and temperance, are 4 cardinal virtues of classical philosophy, and they also make up theology, the basis of some of the religions across the world. What those 4 terms do is they give us a lens to view ethics through, called the virtue theory of ethics, and it's the way that we see how do we make correct decisions, the decisions that are right for our lives. Originally, it was written about in Plato's book called The Republic, Book 4, and then it was expounded on with Aristotle when he wrote a specific chapter on courage in Nicomachean Ethics. And then we've seen it throughout religious texts. So it's the basis of Stoicism, and it's one of the precursors of faith. So what I want to do is to peel back 2 layers of courage today, because I believe that although we're not going to actually attain excellence in those virtues, we should strive for them every day of our lives to make the best decisions that we can. So I'm going to talk about 2 layers of courage today. The first one is that courage builds character. When I first became the department chair for the dental hygiene department at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, I had the opportunity to have some coaching and some mentorship that really helped me along that journey. And there were 2 things that I learned from 2 different mentors. The first one was a leader leads with their feet. So it's not good if you spend all your day in your office or if you spend all your day working on the computer when your team needs you to be visible and they need you to be there supporting them and asking them, how's life? How can I help? What can I do for you? The other thing that one of the mentors told me, actually had me write this down and put it on a bulletin board by my office so I see it every day. He said, Elizabeth, you've got to be really careful about your thoughts, because if your negative self-talk is what is pervasive in your mind, then that's going to shape your thoughts, and your thoughts are going to shape your expression, and your expression influences your behavior. And your behavior ends up creating your character, and that is what builds your destiny. So he said it all begins with the thoughts that you're thinking. It was really good advice for me. Abraham Lincoln actually said, reputation is the shadow and character is the tree. And what he meant by that was the basis of who you are, your character. It's deep, it's seated in who you are. It has roots that go down into your past. It has aspirations, which are the branches that are reaching to the sky. But your character is who you are. Now, your reputation is what the shadow is that the trees cast. And that can be malleable. It can change depending on the perspective of people that you're talking to. It can change depending on circumstances in your life. So if we know that our thoughts matter, and we know that our character matters, then why is it that humans continually struggle to exhibit bravery and to do courageous things? We have science that talks a lot about the bystander effect, where in a room like this, with all of you guys being dentists, if I all of a sudden broke my tooth, there's only a few of you who would say, come on, let me help you. And that's proven over and over again from John Quinones on What Would You Do? You know, have y'all seen that TV show? It's coming back, actually. They're having more episodes coming out. So what we see is that people, as a general rule, struggle with being brave. They struggle with doing the right thing. So the moral, what was it called? The moral distress that Carlos was talking about this morning is a real thing. And this is why it happens. Our brains are created this way. When we first became humans, everything stems from the brain stem. So the thought processes that we have, they're all going to be governed initially through the limbic system. It's the lizard brain, the type of brain that is the initial response. So this is where we have fight or flight or fear or fawn. So it's the first thought that you have is going to be one of a lizard brain where you don't really have control over what you're doing. But as these thoughts bubble up to the frontal cortex or the frontal lobe of your brain, that's where we find our emotional control and our behavior control. This is where our learning center is. This is where we can make good judgment calls. So if you know going into things that every single one of us in here is going to have that initial fear or the initial pang of anger, if that's going to be your first response, just let it have a millisecond to get to the frontal lobe where you can make a rational thought. You can grasp that little millisecond before you make a decision. And all of that, what I just said, was summed up beautifully by Nelson Mandela, because fear and courage go hand in hand together. So Nelson Mandela has a beautiful quote where he says, you know, courage is not the absence of fear, it's the triumph over it. So if these things go hand in hand, I want to tell you a story about my experience with fear. So I grew up in the Mississippi Delta. It's about 20 miles from the Mississippi River. And I grew up on a farm, and we had catfish farms. So my granddad and my dad were catfish farmers. And so this is almost identical to my backyard when I was growing up. We had 2 big catfish ponds over a little levee out of our backyard. They built those ponds when I was 5 years old, and I remember being scared of the catfish ponds because I was told there are snapping turtles in there are water moccasins in there, that pond is deep, and you are going to drown if you go into that pond. So I was scared to death. I never went in there. A few years later, I was about 10, I got to witness the harvest of the catfish. And my dad and my granddad and his team were all wearing waders. That's the clothes that you see these people wearing. This is for my Yankee friends who don't know what waders are. But they were all wearing waders. And they were in the pond. They'd cast these nets and they were pulling the fish in. And I said, wait a minute. I thought the pond was really deep. Why are they wearing waders? And my mom was like, that pond's not deep. It's only about waist deep all the way across. And so I gathered up after the catfish were harvested, I knew there was nothing in there that was going to be bumping my legs. So I went and walked across the pond, and it never got over my thigh. So what I learned from that is this quote: fear is a mile wide. It's like those catfish ponds, right? I walked out there and thought, oh, I cannot do this. But it's only an inch deep. So we need to make the kind of decisions that go past our fear, and when you step into it, you'll realize, you know what? It was only an inch deep. So the words that we're saying, the words that our brain listens to in our own head are important. And I would like to challenge each of you to use the words in the middle of the screen to tell yourself how you are. How are you at work? How are you at home? How are you with your staff? How are you with your students? Use those words, because remember that what we think about ourselves become our expressions, become our behavior, become our character, and ultimately shape your destiny. The next thing I wanted to talk about is how courage is something that is cultivated. You build it. You make a decision ahead of time that you're going to make a courageous choice, and you stick with it. And here's my Instagram quote of the day: be brave even if you're not. Just pretend to be, because nobody can tell the difference. And they truly can't. I'm scared to death right now, but I don't know if it's coming across like that. There is a researcher named Jim DeTert. He's written a book that's called Choosing Courage, and it's all about being brave in the work setting. So he's researched thousands of people, and he's seen how they were successfully courageous. And by successfully courageous, he meant that they stood up for something important and they kept their job. And not only did they keep their job, they made a consensus among the team that they influenced. It's a great read. What he found out through his research was that people who are successfully courageous will take an issue and they'll frame it in a way that the audience can relate to. They use important data, but they don't overwhelm people with data. They manage the emotions of not only themselves, but the people that they're influencing, to the point where that team actually feels like they were included rather than pushed aside. And then finally, Jim DeTert said that successfully courageous people are consistently connected to the organization's priorities, so they stay involved with the mission. He further reported that people who were successfully courageous spend months or even years building their excellence in their field. So they're known as people that are technically sound and they're good at what they do. They show that they're invested in the organization, and then they also demonstrate even-handedness and prudence in their interactions. So those kind of people who are successful at being brave have spent a long time building their credibility, and they're not haphazard or just stepping into something and speaking just because they feel a certain way at that moment. He also said that people who are successfully courageous would ask themselves these two questions that you see in blue on the screen, which basically, in Elizabeth Carr language, means they pick their battles. They don't jump into everything and decide that everything is an opportunity for you to show courage. So as you're deciding and cultivating courage in your life, I want to remind everybody that courage and humility go hand in hand, and they are balanced on the scales of your decision-making and your actions. And if it's not, then that can come across in a varying way of difficulty, like this. A person with low courage and low humility is known as a toxic team member. So these are the people that are apathetic at work. They don't care. They may say things like, "It is what it is," and they say that all the time. These people tend to slip into gossip, and they also do whatever it takes to be protective of themselves, and that includes lying and cheating. So these are not the type of members that you want on your team. People with high humility and low courage are known as people pleasers. So they are desperate for your approval. They take things very personally and are very needy. People with high courage and low humility can be seen as your agitators. So they may be extremely capable and very good at what they do, but they lack connection with others, because humility matters so much in life. And if you're technically great at what you do, but you're not humble, it's not going to go across the right way with your team. What we want to be, what we strive to be, is to be balanced with high humility and high courage. This is a type of leader that builds trust, that comes across as loving, even when they say things that are very difficult to hear. So they give feedback, but they do it in a sense of warmth, where the people who understand that this person has their best interest at heart, they say, I trust this person, because they're humble and they're courageous. So through your leadership journey, the ACD is providing you with so many tools. I mean, you have a framework to operate under that's been here for many, many years. So as you're striving to become a leader, I want to challenge you to remember every action that you take, every brave thing that you do is dropping a pebble into the pond of the people's lives around you. And so each thing that you do is going to ripple across everywhere that you go. But with the ACD, you have this happening. So you have all of you wonderful dentists dropping pebbles in the pond of the world, and you're consistently making ripples across the whole entire country in North America that's going to be positively affecting dentistry. So this is my challenge to you at the end of this. ACD is fantastic. But I would argue that ACD's most important reason for being is to help this next generation that's coming along. So if you are, please get involved with SPIA and be the influence that those young dentists need to hear, because this generation that's coming into education right now is the loneliest generation. Even though they're so connected to social media and to digital platforms, they are alone. So they're together and they're alone at the same time. They have the most anxiety out of any generation alive right now. And your role as a wise mentor and as an example for these students to say, I know that I've gone through these issues before, and here is the framework that we work through with the ACD, and this is the thing that you can do as a young dentist, and to be their support. I think that may be the most important thing that ACD does. So that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoy your lunch. I'm thankful that y'all let me come up and speak. Thank you so much.